peace and stop the fighting. One love, one unity, got to break the bondage. No more borders around me, no more mental slavery. Bob Marley said it best, stand together and feel alright. But if we fight, let it be for justice. And if we war, let it be for justice. At all costs, let it be for justice. Do what is right, let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. No matter what it costs, let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. Inequity, disparities, and violence, oppression, racism. No, I won't be silent. No more barriers for we. We will thrive, prosperity. Marcus Garvey said it best. None but ourselves can free your minds. But if we fight, let it be for justice. And if we war, let it be for justice. At all costs, let it be for justice. Do what is right, let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. No matter what it costs, let it be for justice. 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 No matter what it costs, let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. We the people are from royalty. Royalty. I wish so many of us can see. Keep the culture, be united, stop the violence. Put the power in ourselves, create the franchise. In the news last week, another bomb overseas. I'm so sick of these murders in the streets. Ooh, why I? Ooh, why I? Why I? Why I? But if we fight, let it be for justice. And if we war, let it be for justice. At all costs,
Greetings and salutations, one and all.
for justice. Do what is right. Let it be for justice.
How you doing?
Let it be for justice.
It's Community and Finance Night right here on the night shift to DJ Kevin Stew.
Let it be for justice. Let it be for justice.
I want to say big ups to each and everyone locked in right now. Those from near, those from far. Welcome.
Equity, disparities, and
Those on TuneIn Radio on the night shift to DJ Kevin Stew. Much love to you.
no, I won't be silent. No more barriers for we. We will thrive, prosperity. Marcus Garvey said it best. None but ourselves can free your minds. But if we fight, let it be for justice. And if we war, let it be for justice. At all costs, let it be for justice. Do what is right, let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. No matter what it costs, let it be for justice. 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 No matter what it costs, let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. We the people are from royalty. Royalty. I wish so many of us.
Yeah, big up to everyone locked in right now.
Keep the
Those
culture.
on TuneIn Radio on the night shift to DJ Kevin Stew. Those hailing from across upon One Harmony Radio. Top of the morning to you guys over there in the UK.
Overseas, I'm so sick of these murders in the streets.
Much love to those out of New Jersey. Locked in on NIE Radio.
Why I? Ooh,
Hanging out with the New Jersey's finest, the Motivator. Much love to you, my bro.
but if we fight,
Big ups to those out of New York.
for justice.
An island worldwide exhibiting the power of music. China Nicole, Gary, much love to you.
Let it be for justice.
Big ups to those who are locked in on Reggae Pulse Radio out of Long Island, New York.
Let it be for justice.
Atomic Force Crew,
Let it be for
DJ Buck.
no matter what it costs. Let it be for justice. Let
Much love to you all.
Inequity, disparities.
Big up to those on the Foundation Radio Network, ClintonLindsay.com.
Oppression, race.
Much love, Mr. Lindsay.
Won't be silent.
Twinkle Toes himself.
No more barriers for we. We will thrive, prosperity.
Those who are hailing out of Texas.
Created best, none but ourselves can free.
Those on Oliwap Radio.
But if we
Dusic Media Group. And WGLRO. Home of the Donna Walker Morning Show. The People Station, taking it from the sheets to the streets. Touching from Denmark to Detroit and all points in between. Big ups to you, Donnie. Much love, my big brother.
let it be for justice. Let it be for justice.
Big ups to those locked in on PEMGTV.com.
Let it be for justice.
Those hanging out in Clubhouse.
Let it be for justice. Let it be.
Bubbling in the stew pot. Much love to you.
Let
Those on Facebook Live.
it be.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
We the people
Those on Zeno FM.
from royalty.
Big ups to you.
Royalty.
Now those of you on Clubhouse and Facebook Live, remember it's only a segment broadcast, so don't get too comfortable.
Keep the culture, be united. Stop.
But do use up the link.
Put the power in ourselves. Create the franchise. In the news.
KevinStew.com.
Overseas, I'm so sick of these murders in the streets.
No need to be shy.
Why
Come on up and be interactive. Join us in the stew pot. Those of you wondering what the stew pot is what others call a chat room. But because of fancy over here on KevinStew.com, it's the stew pot. Let's go to KevinStew.com and boom, you are there. You are a part of the business. You don't need to register. You don't need to sign up for anything. You don't need to offer your firstborn an internal organ or a blood sacrifice. None of that. Just go straight to KevinStew.com.
Let it be for justice. Let it be.
You can remain anonymous if you choose.
Let it be.
You can put your name so I know who I'm interacting with.
Be for justice. Let it be for justice. Why let it be for justice. Why
I want to say thank you to my segment sponsors. Pulse Media Group, and being in a moment is priceless. Give them a call.
justice and
They can do everything you see here on KevinStew.com and more. So you have an event you want to stream live, on a secure platform, whether yours or theirs, just give them a call. 754-999-1140. What kind of event you might ask?
Marcus Garvey said,
Well, be it a church service, a wedding, a party, a graduation, a funeral, a seminar. Once you have the camera and an internet connection with a computer, they can sort you out. Tell them Kevin Stew sent you. Call them up, 754-999-1140. I want to say thank you to Althea and her Healing Heavenly Hands. Althea SU is a licensed massage therapist operating out of Broad County, North Miami-Dade and South Palm Beach counties. She comes to you, bringing her table, her oils, and over 20 years massage therapy experience.
no matter what it costs, let it be for
Go ahead and give her a call today, 954-655-9000.
justice. We the people are from
She only has one request outside of paying her.
royalty.
That is to get off her table and go sleep somewhere else. It's known as the Kevin Stew clause.
Keep the culture,
That's because I'm always falling asleep on her table.
the power in ourselves, create the franchise. In the new,
Thank you, Althea.
the bomb overseas, I'm so sick of these murders in the streets.
Thank you to Reggae Global Entertainment. Reggae Global will act as your booking agents, handle your tour management, take care of your business registration, legal service referrals, music production, marketing and promotion, and so much more. Give them a call, 954-804-8199. That's 954-804-8199. Or check them out on reggaeglobal.com.
Justice, inequity, disparities, and violence.
Thank you to McNeil Trucking.
Oppression, racism, no one.
With McNeil Trucking, your goods are in good hands. They're licensed and insured movers in the state of Florida.
We will thrive, prosperity.
Go ahead and give them a call today, 954-406-9740. Want to move some things into storage? Want to move from point A to point B? Don't have the manpower, don't have the transportation? Don't worry. You have the name and you have the number. McNeil Trucking, 954-406-9740. Tell them you heard about him on the night shift to DJ Kevin Stew.
Let it be
Kicking off our broadcast tonight, the sound of China Nicole.
No matter what it costs, let it be.
Many of you would know this song by now.
Let it be for justice.
It's called Let It Be for Justice.
For justice, let it be for justice. No matter what it costs, let it be for justice.
And tonight we're on the journey.
Let it be for justice.
Some have been on the journey for longer than others.
Far from royalty.
With me tonight on the phone
With so many of us,
is one person on such a journey.
should be united, stop the violence. Put the
She's been on it since
franchise.
September 4, 2008.
I'm so sick of these murders in the streets.
And it hasn't been easy. But with tonight we get to find out how the journey started and what the journey has been like. Where we are on that journey, how we can help. So call your friends, tell your friends, friends of your friends, friends of your enemies, enemies of your friends, and your enemies too, because the information is good for everyone. Numbers to call, numbers to text, numbers to get you in touch. 773-789-STEW. That's 773-789-7839. Those of you watching, you can see it scrolling across the bottom of your screen, right down there. You see it? 773-789-7839. And I want to welcome right now to the broadcast. And this is Donna Underwood. Donna, you there?
Yes, I am, Kevin.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you?
I'm here. I'm doing good.
In spite of, right?
Do what?
In spite of. You're here and doing well.
Right.
Yeah. So, Donna, we'll just jump right into it. You and I have spoken a little bit about this, but some of my listeners, you know, they don't know anything about what we're talking about tonight. They don't know anything about your son, Daniel Ray Underwood. So,
Yes.
if you'd be so kind, please give us a little bit of insight into this journey that you've been on seeking justice for Daniel.
Okay, I'll try. I just I catch myself rambling a lot, so you can stop me anytime.
Not a problem.
Okay, I'm trying to be Daniel's voice. On September the 4th, 2008, I got a call about 1:24 from a woman from Daniel's phone, and she was calling me Mom. And it kind of took me back, you know, because I was expecting Daniel to say something. And I didn't know. I only had one daughter, and I had just talked to her minutes ago. And so she started in telling me Daniel shot himself. And I was like, you know, I just went into the frantic mode, and I asked, was he going to be okay? And, of course, she said she didn't know, and I could hear her turn around and ask somebody, and they said they didn't think so. So we rushed on up there, me and my husband and my daughter, and when we got there, they wouldn't let us in, and before I even got up on the curb, Rebecca Nelson had come out and had grabbed me around the shoulders, and I don't know, you know, what she was saying to me at the time. But anyway, the officers told us to go on to the hospital, that Daniel was on his way, but there was still ambulances there, so I guess he probably was still there, and we just, you know, didn't know it. They had taken about 20 photos of him, some of them of him while he was still alive, laying on the floor before the paramedics even started, you know, any kind of life-saving thing on him. So we went to the hospital, and it was just in hysterics, and they brought him through the back way, and they wasn't doing any kind of resuscitation, what do you call it, on him.
Resuscitation,
and
yeah.
Then they seen my daughter, you know, was all upset, and they started, you know, like they were giving him breath or whatever. And then they come out, and we knew there was people up there in the little room, the waiting area we was in, but we didn't know who they were. And we started going to the chapel, and then these people ended up in the chapel with us, and we still didn't know who they were. Well, we found out later that they were friends of Rebecca that was calling her as the doctors and nurses was telling us everything, you know, about him, you know, that he had passed when he passed away and all that. And it was, you know, it was just a really weird situation. And Rebecca come up there, and I met her when I seen her, and I said, "Can you know, tell me what happened?" You know, and she started in about, well, she was grabbing for his hand, and she missed his hand and got the gun, and it moved and went off and got the side of his face.
Wait, hold on. One second.
Yeah.
Who is Rebecca?
Rebecca was there at the house with Daniel.
Who is she?
She had moved. She was, what he told us is that he moved her in to cook, clean, and help pay on the bills. But, of course, you know, they were living there, you know, so you know how it is.
Okay.
So she had been seeing him sometime the end of June, and she had moved her stuff to his house July 4th weekend because my daughter had moved in the same weekend, and she only stayed like a week and a half because she didn't get along with Rebecca. She didn't like her at all. And so my daughter had moved out. But she started, you know, telling me that. And I said, "So you think he didn't mean to shoot himself?" And she said, "No, I don't think he did. He had that look in his eye like, oops." And, you know, I'm looking at her, you know, I don't see a tear or anything. And then I realized that blood was all over her hands and had went down her arm, but it was like it was not dried, but like it was soaked in, you know what I mean? Like a stain.
Yeah.
And I said, "Is that Daniel's blood?" And she was so happy that I seen that blood because she had both hands up in my face telling me. And she just shook her head, yes, you know, like that. And then from then until I would say, I want to go see Daniel, you know, and then I was just crying, you know, and I said, "They won't let me see him." And I was talking, you know, to my husband and stuff. And she says, "Well, I'll go get my good friend," and she called him Bo, which it was one of the detectives on it. And she would put her hands up in the air and make quotations as she was saying it. And then she'd either smile or wink, and she did this like, I don't know how many times from the time, from that day until...
At the hospital she's doing that?
Yes, at the hospital she did, and she went like walking to like she was going to tell them to let us see him, but of course they still didn't let us see him, you know. But which my daughter took off because she was going to go in there if they was going to let anybody in. But that's the way it started, you know. And I didn't hardly know this woman. I had just barely. I'd met her just 2 or 3 or 4 times. I don't even know how many. They'd come out here and stay like 30 minutes one day, and then me and Danny had went up to the house several times, and either she wouldn't be there or she'd be leaving to go play poker or pool or whatever, because that's where he met her at, was at the clubs in town.
Okay.
And that's kind of how it went. And the detectives had asked us to come back up to the police station and, you know, tell them, you know, talk to them a little bit. So they told us to come about 9 or 10 o'clock. And I called her on the way up there, and I said, "Can you bring us Daniel's phone?" And she had drove away in his Durango, and she had been drinking, so I don't even know why they let her off in it. But she started cussing us out. She said she owned everything that was his. And I'm like, "I don't want to get nothing that's yours. I just need his phone to try to get contacts out of it, you know, so I could call friends with phone numbers that, you know, I didn't have." And she just kept cussing. And she finally, we didn't actually get the phone back right then. We got it back later that afternoon. But she did that, and then when we got a call first, when they go back to the hospital. While we was at the hospital, there was this man come in there and prayed for us, or with us, and I thought it was a hospital chaplain or something because I didn't know him. And then later he was out in the hall with the detectives and stuff, and he was telling us that we wasn't allowed to go back into the house till Biohazard had cleaned it up. And, you know, we were just listening because we thought he was an officer. We didn't know. And a little bit later that afternoon, we had some people call and tell us that there was people going in and out over there fixing to clean up that house. And we didn't know who they were or anything, because I had already told the officer, said, make sure you lock it up, and then when y'all get through, you know, call us first. And he said, okay, well, they had already released the scene, but we didn't know it at the time, and they just told us going home. And when we went up there, or when Danny, my husband, and several family members and friends had went up there, she had called then and was cussing my husband out again. And I'm like, okay, y'all just settle down and let me try to talk to her, because I was, you know, I wanted to make sure we get the phone and stuff back, you know, and we wanted the Durango back because we didn't want her driving it. I mean, Danny had even talked about letting her take over payments, you know, if that's what she wanted, because we knew we couldn't pay it, and he owed $23,000 on it.
Okay.
So, you know, we wasn't, you know, to us, that part didn't make anything, you know, mean anything other than, you know, we didn't want to be responsible for anything like that. And she was cussing, and then I called her and was just trying, you know, to be calm, as calm as I could, you know, and she started cussing me and telling me she had already got so many thousands of dollars. She said 4,000 and something for her mama, and I don't remember, she said 1,000 or 1,200, something for her child's clothes, one of her kids, she had 3, and for school. And just all kinds of stuff. And I just held the phone up because I didn't want her to hear me, you know, crying. And so from that point on, we found out that she had went back up there and over at Daniel's and stole his laptop, stole his favorite pool cues or sticks, whatever you call them.
Yeah, cues.
And, yeah, and some, he had, like, he collected Zippo lighters, and he had them in a little case. And she had stole some of them, and just all kinds of stuff. We didn't know that she was handed a bag and something else while Danny and them was up there. And then after she went back up to the police station, I think it was right after 5, when they did finally interview her that morning. And on the second interview, she tells them that she did go back up there and get some stuff. And she wiped stuff out of the computer, files out of it. She deleted all contacts out of the phone, as far as phone contacts and stuff, and most of the text messages. And, you know, they was acting like nothing was out of place, you know. And every time we'd ask them something, it was like, just let us take care of our job, you know. So we tried to let them. We really did. And she was claiming on the second one that she wiped the numbers out because she didn't want me to cause any trouble. And I'm like, I was the one trying to tell everybody, you know, just keep quiet, don't be talking, don't say anything, because we didn't want to hamper, you know, any kind of investigation.
Right. So
and,
hold on 1 second, Donna.
Okay.
So she is getting all of this information, and she's getting all of this all the things that they're handing over, because she says that she is his wife or something. Why weren't you guys, the parents or the family members, the ones being given the information or anything?
Okay, well, I'll see, and Kevin, all this information come at different times, because at first they told us that it was probably going to be a suicide, but they would wait until the ruling of the autopsy. Well, when I finally got public record or record requests and picked up most of the things from the PD, we started watching the videos, which they're on YouTube, And before she is questioned there at the police station, she's asking for Daniel's wallet and his credit cards, and she says they're in my name, but they're actually my cards. And we're just sitting there like, with our mouth hanging open while we're listening to this. And then she goes on, and she said there was a large sum of this money missing, a cash money missing, which we didn't know that. And she said that just different things like that, that was just crazy. And I asked the detective, I said, after he watched them, I said, what did you think of her stories? And he said none of them was, there wasn't any major inconsistencies. And I said, how do you figure that? I said, once she said that he wasn't saying a word and he bent down over that gun. And one time she's saying that they were face to face within 6 inches of each other. It couldn't have been more than one way. It just couldn't have been. And they just didn't want to talk to me. And when I went up there, we went up there like a few days after, we'd tell him a little this, a little of that. Because everything we would say, he'd say, if anybody's got any first-hand information, tell them to come and talk to us. We didn't know where they'd been, who they'd been with. It's not like we knew what to do. We thought they were doing it. So first I asked them about a piece of scalp that ended up in the living room, which Daniel was killed in the end of the hall. And all I was doing was trying to figure out, because it would have had to been like a 90-degree and then turn back to get in the spot it was at. And they just looked at each other like they had never seen it. And it wasn't in any crime scene photo. I did take a picture. I didn't take any measurements or anything.
Right.
And, there was stuff that had been moved. There was stuff that was not there. They used as the fact that Daniel was looking at his laptop due to the fact of a lit cigarette being in the ashtray sitting by the laptop. Well, in the crime scene pictures, there's no ashtray or lit cigarette. There is 2 packages of her brand. Daniel did not smoke them, and there was a Coke can where she drank whiskey in her Coke and stuff, and Daniel just drank beer. You can ask anybody in town about that. But, and they would just act like we were crazy, and they would shut us down. And the ranger, I asked him, because he said he made a determination that they called him in for a questionable death, I think is how I saw it. And he said that because Daniel's feet or lace was on top of the shotgun, and it was broke open, and one of the officers said it looked like somebody was trying to eject it. So we asked him how he made that determination, and he wouldn't even answer. He just got really mad, and he said, are you trying to say we didn't adequately investigate the case? And I'm like, no, sir, I'm not. Because I was just trying to ask them questions and see how they made their determination and then what they based all this stuff on. Because it was a sham. It really was.
So, wait, these police officers were from where? Where did this incident happen?
Sulphur Springs, Texas.
Sulphur Springs, Texas. Okay.
So, let me see where. So, like I said, all this stuff, they didn't collect any evidence hardly. They took the gun, and I had called up to the investigator, and I said, so she didn't have any GSR on her? And he said, no. And I said, and she didn't, and her prints wasn't on the gun? And he said, no. Well, I called back later, after we thought about it and talked about it, and I said, did you print is the gun been printed? And he said, no. So they didn't print the gun. And they did do an older type, because I talked to Dallas, of GSR testing, and it was actually took out to the DPS lab, and I can't remember, I may have it wrote down somewhere, where they brought it back within 3 or 4 days, said they either couldn't get to it at the time or some reason. Okay, so then that meant, they should have went ahead and sent it to Dallas. But I picked up open records on December the 30th, and that's when the GSR went to Dallas. And then the results
And
of
it was
them,
2008?
yeah.
Okay.
And then the results didn't come back until I want to say June or July of 2009. And he called and read that there was elevated amounts on her, and I said, "What does that mean?" And he says, "You'll just have to call Dallas." Which they say it could mean they fired the gun. It could mean they handled it or was in this vicinity. Whatever. So he said that no one else had a hold of that gun but Daniel. And
Who said that? The police said that?
yeah. And when so it was ruled a suicide. And when I had I had several people. I had some deaths on some people that was looking into it, because we couldn't pay for it. We was just having to, more or less do pro bono, except one.
Right.
And when he finally got through with it, well, we had a conversation with a medical examiner, and then she told me to send, the records and the crime scene photos and the interviews and all this. And she called me back. It was sometime in 2002, 2020, I guess. Or is that right? Or am I saying it wrong? Anyway,
So about 2 years ago?
Years. Yeah.
Okay.
And she said the autopsy itself, she said, does not prove that Daniel fired the gun. She said it was either very extremely close to his mouth or even in it, but it does not tell him who pulled that trigger. And she said as far as the soot or residue that's on his left finger would have been like around the breech area. It could have been around the barrel. He could have been setting it down, that they could not tell. And so she said that, if I got with a JP or a DA or whoever, that she would be more, and they done some re-looking at stuff, that she would be more than willing to change it to a homicide or at least undetermined.
And that was a medical examiner?
Yes, the one that they said they were standing by her ruling. And so when I called her back, they wouldn't even set me up with the DA to talk to him. I talked to the assistant. I don't know if she was the assistant DA or if she was assistant or an advocate or something. I don't know who she is. I mean, I do have her name. But anyway, she called me back and she said they were standing by it and they wouldn't even reopen the case because Dr. Urban's wouldn't change, the autopsy did not have anything to change it. And I said, that we have two witnesses. We have one that she's more or less told, more kind of recanted some of it and told it a little bit plainer because I could tell she was traumatized. We talked to her one time before they closed the case. Well, yeah, before they closed the case completely as far as the reports. And we did not ask her, go down into the details, but she was talking about how the smell was just terrible, and then how she remembered the deafening sound, and just all kinds of stuff like that,
So
then
there was someone else in the house at the time?
Well, them, and then in 2012, my daughter had put something online, and we had a girl come on there and start talking, and she said Rebecca confessed to her that she shot him.
Oh, wow.
She said, and I collaborated and looked back, and sure enough, she was taking care of her grandmother at the time, and I found that. And so she has went on record as saying it, and she's willing to, tell the story about what Rebecca said. But they're not willing. They say that witnesses alone can't change. And I'm like, it's not the witnesses. She had a recoil on her leg. We found out she had a recoil or bruises, and I asked the investigator, I said, did you see him? And he said, yes, we took pictures all over her body. Well, they did not take a picture of the recoil. In the interview tape, she says she has the recoil is healing or something because it's itching or doing something. And he asked her whereabouts it was, and he marks it on a piece of paper that I never got, like his notes. And so they never took no photographs of the recoil. They didn't do a lot of things.
Wait, so
and and that's
one
what,
second, Don. Hold on. Excuse me, 1 second. Pardon me. So you said there was a witness, one, and you mentioned Rebecca saying that she had a bruise from the recoil on her leg, but yet still the police said it was only Daniel that had the gun?
Yes. She says this on the interview tapes. You can look at them on the police interviews. And red flag after red flag comes up, and all they would act like was that I was a grieving mother or was trying to point my finger, and I wasn't, because I could accept the fact if Daniel committed suicide, I would hate it really bad, and I would question in my mind, why he did it, but I don't believe it, and I know he needs his voice. We don't have money, and they should have investigated his just like it was a homicide, and then when they could prove suicide, then they could have put that down there, but they did not.
So
that's the way I feel about it.
So let's put a little bit more information out there so people can wrap their minds around what is happening here. But before I do that, let me part company with those on Clubhouse and on Facebook Live. Those are you guys on Clubhouse. Thank you very much.
Okay.
You guys, deuces to you. Come on over to kevinstew.com for the remainder of the broadcast to find out some more of what happened to, well, in this case, trying to find out the truth about what happened to Daniel Ray Underwood. So those of you on Facebook Live, deuces to you. Catch up with you tomorrow when we do this all over again. kevinstew.com is the place to be, and affiliates for the remainder of this broadcast. Now, Donna.
Mm-hmm.
There was, you mentioned the gun. Now, this gun wasn't just a handgun. We're talking about, based on what I've seen, we're talking about a sawed-off shotgun.
12 gauge, yes.
A single barrel sawed-off 12 gauge shotgun. And so it's just so that people can get an understanding of some of the information that when we talk about individuals holding on to the gun and such. So, and why recoil would have been on, or the effects of a recoil would have been on Rebecca's leg. The type of weapon it was a shotgun, a sawed-off barrel shotgun, 12 gauge shotgun.
So, and it was eagle length. It wasn't, too short or anything.
Right. So, so here we have police saying Daniel alone held the gun. However, after, and someone here commenting in the stew pot saying there was a witness on the scene, and based on going through audio recordings, and people can go to the website, Daniel's website, which you're gonna give the information for that in a little bit, so that people can go there and get a whole lot more information. You can see some pictures, you can read some information there, because of course we won't be able to cover everything tonight. But the information is out there. But there was a witness on the scene, and I'm gonna ask you to talk about that in a minute. But just to lay some groundwork here, we have a shotgun being the weapon that was used. We have bruising on the I don't know, girlfriend, roommate,
Yeah.
next person. We have bruising on her leg, which would be consistent with recoil action from the gun.
Mhm.
We have blood on her,
Correct.
which could have been from splatter, it could have been from interacting with him. Whichever way, there's blood on her. We have gunshot residue
Mhm.
that the police did say was on her.
Yes, they seen it.
Okay. But yet still, initially, they said it was just him that had the gun.
Yes, everything that I asked them, I said, "Where did you get this information from?" And they'd say, "From her." You know, and I'm like, "Okay, you know, it was just a bunch of bull." There was ashtrays sitting on the coffee table in the living room.
Yes.
Not there at the computer, but there were ashtrays on the coffee table, and there were all kinds of those red cups, and they were all brands of cigarettes that was there. They didn't even collect them. I'm like, you know,
But-
we don't know who, you know, for sure was there.
Yeah, that could
And-
say that there were other people that were there at the time.
Yeah, we don't know, you know, for sure. We do not know. There was property in the living room that was packed up. It was all her property except Daniel had a book that was like you open it up and it's a safe, and
Okay.
he had put some cash money out of. He got a 401k from work that was nearly 25. I think he got like really 20,000 because they took out, you know, like his taxes out of that.
Right.
He paid some bills off, so he brought cash home except around $4,000 he put in the bank, and he had some in that because he owed. We had given $500 to try to last, you know, till he got that, and he gave us $800 because Danny's his grandmother was in the hospital, so he was going to go see her in Tennessee, so he gave him extra. And then while we were there, one of his ex-wives that they stayed, you know, good friends with the family and everything. He had come by. He called him, told him to come by there, and he paid him the money that he owed him, and that's where he got it, up on the refrigerator, out of that safe. Well, she tells him that when the money's missing, that the money was in a beer stein that was between the kitchen and the living room, and there was one. But I really kind of figure it was, you know, like he put enough in there for gas money or, you know, miscellaneous, whatever, because she said something about she liked to keep count of the money, and I'm like, you're keeping count of my son's money, you know. It was just ridiculous. The shell that was in the gun was too long. He had borrowed that gun from a friend of his that worked at Hydro, and he had given a half a box of bird shot, and I'd have to look. I think it was like 3 slugs, and none of them was the size that was in that gun. They never looked. They never found the rest of the shells that the boy had given. So we don't know where that shell come from. You know, that's just they didn't even bother. And there was stuff. There was the wadding of the shell was left there. There was huge pieces of skull that was all through the house. They should have collected, you know, some of that anyway. And but they acted like everything was just irrelevant to them. That property, I was going to say, in the living room, they didn't even bother taking pictures of it. We had been over there the night before, and there was a curio cabinet there, and she had a few antique dishes that looked like, and a light shining on it, and I made mention how pretty it was. Well, in the crime scene photos, they took one outside. It was dark, and they took one outside, and when you zoom into it, you can actually go into the living room, and you can see some boxes, and you also see that curio is nothing in it was cleared out. and his ex-wife was going to try to get back together, and he said he was running her off. And then I will take this back to 2010. I got an email from a man that said he had moved out of town, and he had just gotten back, and somebody was talking about Daniel and said he killed himself, and he said, no way. He said he had laid carpet for him earlier, and his wife was there at the time. And then when he thought it was like a new wife, I guess is what he thought she was. And he told me, he said, if you want to talk to me, he said, I know some stuff. So we contacted, or he gave me his number, and I called him. And he said that Daniel told him that things started coming up missing, and a large sum of it, or a large chunk, or a large sum, or whatever, of his money was missing. And he said, well, I hate to ask you, but why is she still here? And Daniel told him that she could get very violent, and he was trying to figure out how to get her out. So I talk about violence, okay, and they say no domestic violence, and they couldn't see anything on him at the crime scene. Well, after a while, I mean, that's the most horrific thing, to start looking at your child, laying there dead. But after I got to where I could look, I seen that there was bruises on his arms, like somebody had a hold of his arms, with pressure. And there were also some on his chest and stuff. And I'm like, I'm seeing bruises. So I called the medical examiner back then, and I asked her, I said, can you see these bruises? And she said, well, I didn't do the autopsy. She said, but I'll go pull the photos out of their archives or whatever it is. And
hold on. One second. Sorry, just to interrupt you again. The medical examiner that signed the autopsy said that she did not do the autopsy?
Yes, a student done it, a resident. They have a school there that they teach the residents at. And if they're get picked or whatever, then they come over to the medical examiner's office and they start doing them. But they're not supposed to do anything that's possible that could be a homicide when they first start, like that. And so she called me back and she said, I agree with you. There's bruising on his body and it's in different stages of healing. So she said, you can get these photos. And I said, well, how? I said, we don't have money for a lawyer or go to trial or whatever. And she says, well, she said, have the JP subpoena them. And I talked to the one up here, and he was just as kind, but he didn't know how to do it either. But he called me back in a few days, and he said, they're here. He said, you can come up here and look at them. And we did, and then he gave us copies of them. And I started talking to him and, asked him stuff, and he said, well, I was suggesting you get a lawyer, but I'm back to that. We didn't have the money to pay no lawyer. And that's why we didn't do anything even, ourselves. But I I can't talk. I'm just an old lady that knew something wasn't right, but I can't go up against these lawyers and people, and I don't make sense. I'll lose my train of thought. So, I just felt really inadequate on everything. And all I want, I don't want vengeance. I just want some justice done, and the very least they should have done was put it before a grand jury. And I think that there's a disconnect with the medical examiner and the law enforcement. We're out of district is where we have to do the autopsy, so they should get back. They sent an initial report before they had ever done their police interviews at the police station, and they talked to them by phone, and that's all the investigative report that the medical examiner had to go by. So they signed off on the one that did it because that's all he had. I mean, he didn't really have anything else. And they don't, like up there, they would send their own investigators and do it's an independent, investigation besides the law. What is it, like inquest and stuff.
Yes.
And
Well, that's just it. And having been talking about medical examiners and judges in the state of Texas, one of the things that we've come to realize is these medical examiners in these JP counties tend to be judges. So, based on that, the autopsy then is only valid if there's an inquest, which means there needs to be an investigation.
inquest too, yes. And see, all the JP will do is to look at the autopsy and say, well, that's what the autopsy said. But yet, that's what the officer said, is we're going by that. So, it just makes no sense at all, on that part.
So
she,
there was a student that did the autopsy.
Yes.
The medical examiner signed the autopsy but did not witness or do the autopsy.
Yeah, no, she didn't.
There was
she
no...
could have been in and out, at times, but he was a student. He got his training permit, I think it was like July the 1st of that year. And I know, let me tell you this before I forget, too.
Yeah.
She was also scheduled to do a polygraph, and they had set it up in Paris.
That's Rebecca.
And the investigator and the ranger went up there, and she didn't show up, and he called her, and she said that she decided she didn't want to do it. She talked to her lawyer, and she wasn't going to take it. And she's telling everybody in town she took the polygraph and passed with flying colors. And she did not take it. It's on record that she didn't take that. But, and on the reports, I thought it was very curious that, on their reports, they didn't find it relevant, like they use that irrelevant a lot. So they didn't find it relevant enough to say that she knew that there was missing cash and all this. I mean, just what the interview itself said. So there was a lot of things. She had signed Daniel's name on his about, I don't know, somewhere near $1,000 some checks that I have. I don't know how many more. But they said they couldn't do nothing in that because other people knew. And she said, I said, who else? And they said, her mama. And I called the bank, and she wasn't a signer, so she just said sign,
But she told, I heard one of the interviews that she did with one of the police officers, and she told the police officer that she signed his checks sometimes.
Yes.
And he asked, if he had
her mama.
Yeah, and he asked her if she had permission to do that, and she said yes.
Yes, yeah, I know it.
But the bank doesn't have her as a signer on his account.
No, I checked right just within days. And where they had went to like that 127 club a lot, and the lady up there, I had talked to her, but the reason I even did, see, she had both phones. She had her own phone, and she had Daniel. And she made, I've got the records of how many calls she made. I don't even know the count off my top of my head, but that she made from Daniel's phone. And what I was hearing, it said she was telling everybody she was the beneficiary. But, and I want to go back to that in a minute, but she, hold on, I forgot what I was going to say about that.
With the phones or up at the 127 club?
Oh, okay. So she put a thing on when we were on the Crime Watch Daily show that told a little bit about Daniel's story. And she put that they had been at their club and they had been fighting some, arguing, and that, it just, and I talked to her later, and she said, it wasn't she acted like it was a happy thing, but they never argued, they never did this, they never done that. And also, one of the detectives brought up that she had contacted the officer up there at the police station. I think it was, the name was Mike Wood or Mike Woods, I don't know. And she said it was Daniel's friend, but he never, we don't know what was said or if that officer, contacted them or not. So that was another thing that we were kind of questioning that we heard, on the interview tape. I'm trying to look and see. Oh, and on when I requested the public records, and I had these people looking at them, and several years, I always keep saying, I think there's some more pictures. I think there's some more photos. Well, they kept 20 photos until I think it was 2013 before they finally released them. So everybody that had been trying to help me wasn't seeing the whole picture, because you could see Daniel laying there and his feet on the gun and where the gun was at and everything. And then when they place stuff back, like the gun, which I know, if they move a gun and they get the shell out or whatever, but they made no reference to it, that they had moved it. They had no markers where it was actually at,
Right.
And then they put it back, and they come back in later and took a picture with after they took Daniel out, and the gun was in a little bit different place. I mean, you don't do that. You don't take stuff out. There was different objects that was not there, missing in one photo and there in the other. You just don't do that.
There was one picture that I saw of the living room with a little center table, like a coffee table or something, overturned.
Yes.
And
yes,
Monopoly.
It was overturned, and one of the officers had put their briefcase and his hat down there on top of an overturned table that they didn't bother taking a picture of before. It was just.
And they didn't think anything was odd about that. They didn't think it was odd that there seemed to have been a disturbance in the house.
Right. No, they told me, that there was a altercation there. And they didn't, like I said, they didn't take any of that. And there was evidence there that kind of blowed my mind. There was where she was reported that another guy said she was kidnapped. I don't remember how many days, several, 3, 4, I don't know, at least that many days, and that the guy tortured her while he had her kidnapped. And then she had put online something about a Tony I love you or something like that on a different one, and her brother saying, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "I lied on him and filed charges on him or whatever, but I dropped him or whatever." But she did. She filed charges. I went and got the public records on them.
Right.
And
I had seen that.
He had the boy had like $25,000 bond on these, I think 2 or 3 different ones, and then she didn't drop him. She was actually being extradited back to Texas, and she didn't show up, so that's why they did it. And
so here's a woman who has had run-ins with the law. So apparently, the law is already familiar with this woman.
Really? Yes, she was putting something online one time, and somebody asked her, how was she doing this, and she said she was updating the bind system. Are you aware of what the bind system is?
What is that?
It's like the victims, can keep up with people, the offenders and stuff that are in prison and stuff.
Okay.
And to me, I'm like, why would you be letting somebody like that, that's already locked up, update your bind system? That made no sense. And I called up there and I said, "Do y'all let people do this?" And of course they denied it. The jail did. But I'm like, well, she's getting it from somewhere, and I know she's being extradited. So it was some. You can't keep making this stuff up. And
Right. That's crazy to me. Um, a comment here in the stew pot. The original investigator also submitted to the medical examiner that Daniel had no children and a history of DWIs and depression. Daniel had one DWI when he was a minor at 17, and the fines were paid before he was an adult.
Yes, yes. They were like, he was on probation, and he had to pay like $25 a month. And then he had to, like when he was driving, he would have to change his hours of driving, because he got that DWI.
Right.
So we would have to go before a judge, and have him redo the time. And that's all that is on that part.
Yes.
And they have no record of no depression. They got all that information from her. They got where it says on there that he had the gun in his mouth. Nobody on their record says in his mouth except the officer's initial report to the medical examiner.
Which
So,
is information that she had given.
No,
Rebecca had given?
No, not she gave it to him. She didn't give it to him on record, and he made no note of it in his reports, and she didn't say it on the video. So why you would say that, I don't know.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, again, you have so many tools in your arsenal that with the right support system, with the right people in your corner, you can raise this issue and open an investigation. There's no reason for this to be closed. Here it is, you have two people at you holding the gun, and there was a witness that there were two people holding the gun, because in the 911 call there was another person who was there.
Mm-hmm.
And
she also says by accident too on those 911 tapes. She says it twice.
yes,
But yet
She
it's
said-
out, it's self-inflicted.
right. She said he shot himself by accident. I guess that was her her way of putting that out there at first, or convincing herself, or whatever the reason it is. She emphasized that, and she made sure to emphasize that.
Right.
But
right.
with listening to there's on the website, on the Justice for Daniel website, and I'll go ahead and give you all the website information so you can go look at it. It's justiceforDanielRayUnderwood.com. You can check it out. On there is a podcast series, and in one of those episodes, the other person who was there mentions being called out of her room. She was on her phone with her boyfriend at the time, and Rebecca yelled for her. And she came out and saw Rebecca and Daniel kind of tussling with the gun.
Right.
And when Daniel eventually removed his hand from the trigger, because they were arguing over some money, apparently, allegedly.
Mm-hmm.
And here it is. Now, Daniel, she's telling the Rebecca is telling her to get her boyfriend back on the phone and get him over here. And she wouldn't go because they're tussling for the gun. And then Daniel removes his hand from the trigger. And she only leaves when she saw it where he was in a more comfortable position where his hand was removed from the trigger. But Rebecca had both hands on the gun.
Right. Yeah, she told us that she had it on it when it went off, before and after too. And all Rebecca said on the tapes is that she had, her finger where the bullet come out on top. So, it was, and there was no blood on that we could tell on Maria's door, and there was pieces of a skull into her bedroom. So, the door was open. And the second time I talked to Rebecca, I said, tell me again. I said, what happened? And she started telling me, and she says, you can ask Maria. And I said, so Maria was out there with y'all? And she said, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know.
And so Maria talks about seeing them tussling with a gun, and but yet still Rebecca talks about not having any altercations with him at all, not even to say that they were tussling for the gun that night.
Yeah. No, she didn't say it. But, you know, like I told you, the officers kept saying anybody with first-hand information. Well, they talked to one of Daniel's friends, his fiance, and she had went over there. I don't know if it was that night or the next night. And he said she told several stories while she was there, but one of them was they were fighting over the gun again, and she grabbed the gun, and that's when it went off and got stuck in his head. So, you know, and then he just, you know, they just go right over anything like that, even though he's saying anybody with first-hand information. Well, you know, that what she said. So they just go over it.
But you see, these are the little things that get me from time to time. They get this information, but then they don't follow up on it. Another comment here in the stew pot. Rebecca also put his ex-wife's engagement ring on after the shooting to portray that she was his fiancée. You can see the ring on her hand at the crime scene, but she was not wearing it all night.
Yeah. Not as far as we know she wasn't. And we'd never heard about it being no fiancé at all. And it was his ex-wife's ring. The one that he was going to get back with, so, yeah.
That's interesting. And the fact that you, the family members, could have that information, but the police officers who were investigating the case would not, you know, that's kind of puzzling to me. And to know that they did get some information but not follow up on it. Like, for example, you sent me, you had shared with me a picture of a skull fragment that was on the wall, and you mentioned it earlier in this broadcast, that was on the wall behind the sofa, and you had asked a police officer how he thought it got there, and it was like, oh, whatever, let's go ahead and ignore that.
They both just looked at each other, you know, like, and then that was it. We go right on and let them take care of it. And
you mentioned a person at the hospital saying that you guys cannot go back into the home until it was cleaned up.
Right.
That you thought was a police officer or something, but it turned out that it wasn't.
It was her brother.
That was her brother.
I didn't know.
Rebecca's brother?
I didn't know it was the family. In fact, when we were sitting there in the chapel,
yes,
and this was on later, and there was like, you know, we had been crying, and we had some people, some friends of ours that had got up out of their bed at night and come up there to sit with us. And there was this laughing going on, and they were coming in, fixing to come into the door of the chapel, and we just turned our heads to look. There was not any sound in the chapel at all, and they just backed up, and it was Rebecca, and I think it was her mother, and I don't know if it was a daughter or who it was with them, but there was like three of them, and they were laughing, and we were still in the chapel, you know, and they just backed up, and it was just like, I can't tell you, it was just like a wall went up, you know, and they did not try to come back in.
So many questions, so many questions. These are unanswered questions, and I can understand the pain and the struggle that it is that you are facing, because when you have these simple questions that you're getting no answers to, then that would be really frustrating, and I can understand that frustration.
It is.
Here it is.
You know, and I thought when we talked to when I talked to the medical examiner, I'm like, okay, you know, they're going to do it. And she said she thought she made it perfectly clear that it was not just based on the autopsy. And I'm like, well, they just, I tell you, the lady told me, she says, from down here in town at the DA's office, she says, well, I'm sorry, but she says, I hope you can just go forward. And I said, yes, ma'am, I am going forward. You know, I've been going, at that time it was like 12 years, but I've been going forward nearly 14 years, and I just want my son's case reopened. You know, I want it reviewed, and, you know, I don't, if she didn't do anything, fine, you know. I can accept it, but these locals are not going to, you know, do anything. But there were so many red flags. It was just unreal, and they would act. They really did. They made me feel like I knew nothing. That all this was, you know, coming into my mind, and then later when people would start, you know, questioning me about it, I'm like, well, you know, I knew it, but they act like there's nothing to any of it.
Have you looked into what the process is as it relates to reopening a case? Because the police department has basically closed this case and ruled it a suicide, correct?
Well, right now it stops with the DA. Now, the investigation itself, to me, not whether she did it or not, but just the protocol of the investigation is in question to me, that someone, you know, didn't do their job.
Well, based on things that I have heard coming out of Texas, it wouldn't be surprised if some people did not do their jobs versus someone.
Right. Oh, that's correct, too.
So, comment here again. The medical examiner acknowledges that Detective Fox was dishonest, but said they were difficult questions that she could not answer.
Right. And I told her, you know, I said, you know, I just want answers, and she said, well, you're his mama, you have to be, you know, you have to be his voice. And I'm like, I'm hearing this from the medical examiner that y'all stated that you ruled, you know, based your ruling on. So when they won't even sit down with me and talk, it says a lot. You know, they're elected officials. So that's the least, you know, he could have escorted me out the door when I got through, but at least he would have heard what I had to say. And as bad as I hate to, because I tell you, I hate talking in public.
Yes.
I really do. I've always like, you know, just one-on-one, and I don't do well talking. I stutter around. I don't know a lot of words, you know, fancy words like they do. So I wasn't looking forward to it, but there's some things you have to do, you know, and I just felt like I had to.
Well, you know, you're just talking with me. You know, it's just us. The Texas Ranger John Vance was not an outside source. He was in-house. There's a comment here in the stew pot.
Yeah, at that time, I think he actually worked in an office just a few miles from there. So now I don't know where his office is, but at that time there was a DPS office that he was out of. But he had just he had started the ranger or he got promoted to ranger in 2008.
Right.
And he had been, up until then, he was a highway patrol. He was they were doing the accidents, and he was, you know, okay with that. But I'm like, you know, I never intended to bring all this out. All I wanted to do was ask them questions and them have the decency to at least find out, you know, some of these. They didn't, you know, if they had went out to the bars, if they had went, you know, and questioned these people, anybody. But unless I brought one girl's name up because he kept contacting us and saying, a lady that she worked with, her boyfriend was really nervous about it and was afraid they was going to question him. So the reason I asked them, because I knew they needed to get to the first-hand information. And in his report, he put that he talked to her and she hadn't seen Daniel in several years. And okay, no, that's not what I was talking about. I knew she hadn't. It was, to make me look stupid, I guess. But.
Right. But even at the club that night, the bar where Danielle was playing, where they were playing pool.
Mm-hmm. At two or three places that night, yeah.
Well, at one of them, there was an altercation where Rebecca and someone got into it.
Mm-hmm.
And
there was. And she contacted me later. Like I said, I didn't know this person either. And she contacted me and said that, because Maria had said she knew her for years, and she said she didn't know me. She told me that she had been out. I don't know if they just lived in another town or if they lived outside. I don't know where she lived, but she said that was lies that she was telling that night. So I don't have any idea. But like I said, they didn't go make no effort to go question anybody.
I agree with this person in the stew pot here, where they say it needs to be brought out because too many people have not been held accountable for too long. The more exposure things like this get, the more there's reason to investigate it. And hopefully you can get an investigator on this, someone listening in would hear it, someone who knows an investigator, someone who is an investigator possibly, could get involved, someone who is versed with the law can get involved also for legal representation in putting all the pieces together and presenting a case to make sure that this is reopened and the people that the parties at play need to be put under the microscope.
Right.
Rebecca needs to be questioned properly, and a proper investigation needs to be done there. The information relating to gunshot residue, relating to fingerprints on the weapon, all these things need to be taken into consideration. Things like the blood splatter, things like fragments, that like the piece of skull found behind the living room sofa. Based on how you describe that, you're saying that it would have to have gone up the hallway and around a 90-degree turn to get over behind the sofa.
Right.
Which means where they said that he got shot wasn't exactly where he got shot.
No. So that's like that. I just want answers. I want answers for Daniel, but I want an investigation for Daniel. I mean, he was a human being just like we are, living and breathing, and they have no reason not to have done him right.
Why do you think there would, and this is purely an opinion, that they would not have put the effort into this investigation as they would probably some others?
I really can't tell you. Like I said, I made the remark about why was she referencing, him as that way, but I wasn't really insinuating. I didn't care. I wasn't doing it for that reason. I just wanted to know what reason that she would be, acting like that with him. And as far as, I don't have any idea. I don't know if she's an informant for sure. I know she said, she gave them tips on the interviews. That's what I know.
Right.
And, I think it costs the city money. I know it does that.
Yes.
And if they wanted to call it a suicide, then they didn't have to go to, paying a lot for the trial, I guess, or whatever. But I can't answer that. You know, they need to answer it, but I can't.
That's interesting to me. Now, in tone, because people talk, and what we have learned from communities that are tight knit and very communicative is there's information that is put out officially and then circulating amongst the members of the community is other bits of information. Relating to the other bits of information, what are some of the things that have been said about the relationship between Rebecca and possibly the police department?
Well, there's been, I don't know how many that said, you know, that she was messing with some of them. I don't know. I do know now that my daughter said that she, when she's in the house, I think she went downstairs, but that I want to say it was a highway patrol at the time, that she had been with him before, and Daniel lived on Carroll Lane, and then there was Jefferson, and it was kind of wide into it. Well,
Right.
Weaver come out, and he lives right over there, so she made, a remark about that. And like I said, there's been, I don't know how many people that's told me that. Even how many people that said that he was with that she was with other people when she was living there. And I've got it and I didn't get it by history. I got it by somebody that went into the computer and got where she was playing poker and stuff like that on his computer on the 9th and the 4th that night. And I'm like, okay, I couldn't even function. And supposedly you love my son and you're playing poker. And then in July, she was talking to somebody. She said she told this guy that some of her girlfriends said she needed to get on some kind of chat, and she was telling him that I think she was in the middle of divorce or something. Which she was still married when
Yes.
she
In
was
one of
with
the
Daniel.
with one of the police investigations, she was asked if she was still married, and she said yes, she was. So, there's so many questions.
They didn't, they didn't take her phone. They didn't do anything. There was a message, like I said, she deleted all the contacts, and most of the messages, there was a few, and there was one on there that says, "We're here when you're ready." Well, that brought, my hair stood up on the back of my neck. I'm like, what's here when you're ready? Because this was like at
And we
11
who?
something that night. Got home at 12 something, so I'm like, was people there, or what was going on? And we were told it was she was supposed to went by and got some hydrocodone from a guy. Well, they did talk to him for maybe 5 minutes or whatever, and he says that he told her that he couldn't get her any or didn't have her any or something. But the message says, "We're here when you're ready." And, that's not even it anyway. It's just none of that was checked out.
Because you see, I asked you about what is being said in and around the town, because in Jamaica we have a saying: if that's not how it goes, then it's pretty close to it. And
Yeah,
that's
well.
the proper translation to the saying. And so we know how rumors go, like Chinese telephone, you hear something or you overhear something here, and by the time it gets down the road it changes. But still, finding out what is being said out there versus what is presented is pretty interesting. And if the police were doing their investigations, or proper investigations, they would have had all of these bits and pieces to put together to form some type of tapestry, to
Oh, yeah.
piece things together, versus just going on. Because all of this that we know about Daniel's death is based on what Rebecca said. All of it.
Right.
Including the fact that
I'll talk
he had the gun. not that they tussled for the gun. And then she turned around and said that they tussled for the gun a little bit. But even the
Yeah,
changing of the information that she has put forward, this is questionable. And if she stands to gain, where she is saying, you know, I am benefiting, I am the beneficiary, so I get everything that he had, and then she has motive.
Yes, yes. Um, I'm just at a standstill. You know, besides the woman that come and told on Stacy's post, you know, about Rebecca confessing to her about shooting him, and she said something about, well, they said suicide, so I just went with it, you know, like that. And that's the way I kind of heard the interview too myself. But I also have another girl that somebody had told me that she confessed to her, so I got in touch with her, and she says, yeah, she did. She said a different reason, but she did say that she shot him. And I'm like, okay, you know, what is she, even though they'll say, well, you know, she was drunk and whatever. Well, even the recoil, you know, she's put that online, that the recoil was, the bruise on her leg was really from them making love the night before. I'm like, okay, then you committed perjury to the cops or whatever because you told them it was a recoil, you know,
right.
something. And not counting all the other, you know, pieces. And she said something about she'd already buried one child and that she won't have to bury another. And then later on, she was kind of mouthy and telling everybody to shut up about it, or she's turning into a lawyer for slander. And she put on there that she had never had to bury a child, you know, like we were grieving or something and trying to blame somebody. And she put, I'd never had to bury a child. I'm like, you said it on the police report that you did, or the interview. So, you know, there's just too many. After a while, there's just too many.
Yeah, so many inconsistencies.
Yeah, and that's what they told me, you know, when she done the polygraph, you know, it could mean she did, or even if she passed, that didn't mean she was a good person, and what, you know, they named a little bit of stuff she was.
You know,
I'm like, I don't care, you know, all I want to know is, did she murder my son, you know? And if it had been an accident, if she'd have said it, I could
you'd have accepted
maybe,
that.
But after all this other, I can't even go there no more. I don't believe it. I believe it was, she was ready for it. I believe it gave her a thrill.
So, comment here, Rebecca Nelson has continued to harass this family for years. So, she continues to call you guys?
If she sees anything online, she does. She at the beginning, she would call me, I don't know how many times a day, saying she needed her clothes and she needed her makeup and all this. And I'm like, all right, I've already found you took garbage bags full of stuff out of Daniel's house, but you didn't bother to get your clothes and your makeup. And finally, we gathered up, you know, most of what was laying around, because she had most of it just piled up, and put it in garbage bags and told her she had so long to come get it, because I wouldn't let her back in the house, and I think that made her mad too.
Right.
But, you know, she does put online, you know, if anybody, she doesn't after the TV when we were on Crime Watch. She hasn't said much since then. But before that, she was acting like, you know, she's fixing to turn everybody in that even likes any kind of a post. And I'm like, and her brother says, what was that word, Stacey? That she couldn't be tried again. It was double jeopardy or something. I'm like, you know, you got to be tried to begin with.
Well,
no
exactly.
Double jeopardy.
Right. Yeah, there was no trial. You know, she wasn't.
Murders. You know, if it's a murder, she's still a murder. You know,
Yeah, she wasn't on trial for murder, or nothing went to trial, so there's no double
No.
jeopardy in this. You know,
No.
the case was ruled a suicide by, as per the investigators, the police department.
That's correct.
But apparently, that was done under questionable circumstances because she may have had, or whether before or at the time of, a relationship with one or more of the police officers. And we don't know the type of relationship either, but she clearly knew some of these guys. If she's going to say to
yes.
you that her friend Jimbo or something like that.
Jimbo, yeah.
Yeah, Jimbo.
They were
And in
dating
quotes,
it.
in air quotes,
On
put
to,
friend
hmm
and wink. You know,
Yeah.
that why would she do that in the first place? You are the grieving mother. She's supposed to be the grieving friend slash girlfriend slash fiance, whatever it is that she was calling herself at the time.
Right. Well, when she cussed us out, that's you can't go much slower than that. I mean,
and that too.
even kicking a dog out, you know, I felt lower than that because we were such shock, you know, and the money, none of this meant anything to us at the time, except, you know, it kept pointing fingers back at her, and like I said, it just. I'd never been in that situation. I never knew people were around like that, you know.
Because even that, he quit the job and cleared out his 401k. So he got, as based on the information that you have, about $20,000, and most of it he kept in cash. He deposited about $4,000 out of it, and so about $16,000, and allegedly there was an argument that led to him going to get the gun because Maria was there, and there was an argument about where did the money go.
Right.
And he's asking.
And I'll tell you another thing. There, it was said 2 different times, one from her and one from Maria, and then one time she says, without saying nothing, but that he was in mid-sentence, and he was like he was saying, what, you know, and like he was backing up, because I could just hear him saying, what in the F are you doing? Because that's how Daniel talked. And he wanted to finish whatever he was saying. My son finished it. If you tried to finish it for him, he didn't like that at all. He wanted to finish his sentence.
Right.
And, you know, and her telling, you know, that he was both-handed or used both hands, and that was a lie. You know, he had hurt his shoulder on his left side and been to the chiropractor for years. But, you know, they just took her word for it all. And I asked them, did they know which, you know, what hand he used, and he says, do you? And the investigator did to me, and I said, I sure do. This is right. You know, and I'm like, you know, I'm not the one under investigation, but, you know, she should have been. And he, you know, when they interviewed her, she didn't cry at all until he gave her the opportunity, you know, telling her how, you know, he knew this was hard and whatever. And then once you get to that point, or even the other interview, that he would say, okay, let's back up, instead of letting them finish, you know, what they were saying. Or ask her 2 or 3 questions together, you know, instead of one and letting her answer that, you know, it just...
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, people can go onto Daniel's website and listen to these podcasts that are there on the website to hear some of the information that was put out. Because they have some of the recordings from these interviews that Rebecca was a part of, Rebecca being interviewed by the police. You know, some of these interviews are there on the website, so you can go and check it out. And kudos to the reporters that did that podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Kudos to them, big ups to them for taking the time out to do that.
Yes, there's been many people, that has tried their best to help us, and we appreciated everything that has ever, and most of the people have contacted me, Joe Cochran and Jennifer right now that's looking at it. And, I don't know these people, and they come in and they can see, just like what it was actually was, instead of it wasn't nothing.
Right. Yeah, Joe is good people. There, you can see there are links to a couple of YouTube's videos on there. The police department interviews are on there.
Mm-hmm. And
And-
Casey Dillingham did a real good article on Daniel. If it's still on Odyssey, is where it was at. I'm just watching the interviews, and her saying what she said made me think, that's how we seen it when we heard it. We were just floored, and that's the way a lot of, just about everybody goes by the same thing that we heard.
Right. So, the timeline of the arriving officers is not even consistent, but we
No.
do know that there was 44 minutes from the time that the first officer arrived on his own and the time that Detective Fox arrived. This is a comment here in the stew pot. So, even those inconsistencies are enough. That's basis for this to be looked at even more. One of the things that I have learned looking at information in the Stacey Stites murder case with Rodney Reed being on death row, one of the things I have learned about the DPS and the crime lab, the Texas Rangers, the local police departments, somehow, some way, they tend to get some of their times and information mixed up, and I don't know how they can consistently do this and get away with it.
Right. And that's true. There's, you have to, when you look at one and then the other report makes a totally different statement,
Yes.
it's just...
And to add insult to injury, here you have the medical examiners that are giving information also that they're one, conducting illegal autopsies, two, giving these autopsies that are null and void because now you have medical examiners that are signing autopsies that they weren't a part of. And you were told this from the medical examiner herself.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Who was that? What's her name? What was that medical examiner at the time?
It's Jill Urban.
Jill Urban.
That signed off on it, yes. But, she also talks, as if it was her and she could look at, had actually had that in her hand, it would have been different. But if these officers are going to do their investigations, they don't realize, they need to give all of it back to the medical examiners.
There's just so much wrong with this investigation, and this is without me going deep into looking at the information. Just listening to what you've presented, just looking at, just perusing and looking briefly at some of the information that you'll see on the website. We have been in contact here and there for a couple of years now. But just now, actually getting to the point where we're talking about this on the air. And
right.
This is
and you contacted me,
Yes.
and that's the way all this has been. It's like I pray, I tell God just to, when it's time for something, to come about, you drop it in my lap, because I don't know anyway. I don't know the protocols. I don't know the steps I needed to take,
Right.
to do any more than what we've done. But I know I can't quit,
No, don't.
And I, I know there's nothing going to bring Daniel back. If anybody's worried about that, I know that. I understand it. I don't grieve for him just all the time. I mean, I think about him really often, and I have bittersweet memories, because every time a good memory will come to my mind, I think, what happened and how they did the investigation too. So that's what upsets me.
Right.
Is that, she took his life to begin with, but then, for them to have done nothing and just sit back and...
Here's the what strikes a card with me with this case. Ed Selmiller, who was a police officer out of Bastrop, allegedly committed suicide. And it was pretty much just ruled a suicide and brushed away under the table, swept under the rug, kind of a thing. Quite similarly to this. And I spoke with Ed's brother, Scott, who was supposed to be on this broadcast twice, and for some reason didn't. I don't know what his reasons are behind that, but he has done interviews, other broadcasts, and he and I spoke, and he told me the story of even just looking at everything. The Texas Ranger who was in charge of the investigation was the deceased man's roommate just months before, but yet still he's a lead investigator. How do they do that?
Wow.
He had a key.
Yeah, he shouldn't have been nowhere near the case investigating it.
Exactly. But here's a man who allegedly committed suicide with a gun that he turned in to the police department. He was a former police officer. Mm-hmm. He turned in his weapon, but this is the weapon that killed him. And also, he pulled the trigger using his offhand. He's right-handed, he used his left hand. And his brother says he cannot do a thing with his left hand.
Wow. Yeah, it does seem similar, doesn't it?
So the similarities here are striking to me. Mm-hmm. And because of that, it just rubs me completely the wrong way.
Right. And, and I have met so many people that are maybe, their situation might be different. It may be different means of killing, but, that's still been ruled suicide, and without, that they really did not go into any details of the investigation, which is just wrong.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And when I can go back and track, because it was like a puzzle, because like I said, I knew nothing. And I don't take everything as, this happened or that happened. I tried to check it out. I don't just go jumping into everybody that's ever said a statement.
Right. In the pursuit of justice for Daniel, how... Well, I guess you already said it. Basically, you just want the truth to come out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people, when they do stuff, there needs to be consequences for their actions. They need to take responsibility for it. This is one of those rough ones. A lot of people have probably not heard
of Daniel Ray Underwood. But after tonight, it's reason for you to go and look him up. Go check out the website. It's justicefordanielrayunderwood.com. Look at the information that is on there. Reach out to the family. Again, if you know someone in the legal system that can assist this family, they don't have the financial resources to pay for an investigator to get deep down in this. They don't have the resources to pay an attorney to argue their case. But if you know someone who is willing to give up their time and their efforts and their expertise to this, do contact them. There is a whole Facebook page that you can reach out to the family through, and it's Justice for Daniel Ray Underwood, just like the website.
Right. And I actually talked to another DA in another county, and then a previous DA that has works at a place where he had to sign that he wouldn't take any other besides their company's real big, so he's got to spend all his time on there. But they said they wouldn't have any problem taking this to a grand jury. And I just barely talked to them, about stuff. And they said they wouldn't have any problem whatsoever taking it to a grand jury. Which, again, you got to look in Texas, how's that grand jury? Is that, going to be run by the DA, or are they really going to let evidence be presented,
Right. Well, Donna, I encourage you to continue being courageous and continue the pursuit of justice for Daniel. One final comment here. In the stew pot, Donna Underwood has done the job of 15,000 investigators on something that should have never had to look. That she should have never had to, on something that she should have never had to look. Donna has done a phenomenal job of saving everything. She just needs the help of everyone to put pressure on Will Ramsey to even take a meeting with her. Who is Will Ramsey?
That's our district attorney.
Oh, well, let's go then. Mr. Ramsey, come on. You're here to serve the people of the district that you're presiding over. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go.
And that's what little bit I told the woman up there at the DA's office on the phone was just a little bitty fraction. And she said, that, and I said, y'all not even let me schedule an appointment or meet with him to talk with him, even on the phone. And she said, well, just consider this talking to him. And I'm like, no, I don't consider it talking to him.
Yeah, no. Talking to him talking with him is talking with him, not someone representing our, no. We need to have a talk with him. You're right. A an elected official. You're there for the people because they put you there. And this is one of the people. Whether she voted for you, yes or no, she's a part of the people.
Right.
So do your job. Listen to your people. You need to be available. It's not every day everybody is coming up to you wanting to have an audience. The ones that, and here's a situation where, come on, it needs to be addressed. So, Mr. Will Ramsey, could you do your job, please, sir? Donna, to you and the family, however it is that I can continue to give my support, I'll do so.
Well, I appreciate it so much, Kevin. I appreciate you letting me unburden myself, I guess, with, just some of the facts, and that's not all of them,
Yeah.
but
there's
the
more.
main one.
There's more, and as the family feels willing to, I'll open up this platform for other members of the family and other friends and anybody else who has something to say with regard to this particular case. Come on out. Let's have your voice be heard. Because the more we speak up, is the more attention that we'll be able to get. And in Texas, apparently nothing happens without media attention. And
No, I know. And that's sad because, like I said, I'm not trying to point fingers at law enforcement, but there's no other resource, to go. They just shut me down.
well,
And they had done others that way, so.
4470 says if people of Sulphur Springs knew how our local government has treated the family, their heads would roll. Well, maybe they do need to know.
Right.
So with all the podcasts, all the interviews that you've done, everywhere that you have spoken, go ahead and put it on mass media. Put it out there on all social media platforms as you can, as many as you can. Just put it out there, not just on justicefordaniel.com or Justice for Daniel, the Facebook page. Put it everywhere. Because people need to know.
I'm just tired.
Understood.
But I still want to, I still am going. I'm still breathing. So I told Daniel, I promised him that I would keep going for him.
Well, let's keep going. Let's keep going.
All right. And I appreciate you having me, Kevin.
It's my honor. We'll be in touch.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
You're very welcome. Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, whatever you can do, however you can support this family, please don't hesitate. Visit the Facebook page, Justice for Daniel Underwood. Visit the website, Justice for Daniel Underwood, DanielRayUnderwood.com. One word. Let's get this case properly investigated. He deserves it. The family deserves it. They need this closure. This happened September 4, 2008. And they've yet to have a proper investigation done. They have so many unanswered questions. But for what? Because they don't have the money to pump into the system to get it done. They don't have the money behind them. They don't have the media influence or the media backing. Well, guess what? We all, when we do our little bit, just like the Jamaican saying, one cocoa full basket. Every little bit placed in that basket fills it up. And so collectively, we have the power, we have the voice. So, Mr. Will Ramsey, you need to be listening to the people because they are the ones that you work for. None of them work for you. These are the people that pay your bills. These are the people that feed your family. So the least you could do, sir, is give them an ear. This has been the Night Shift to DJ Kevin Stew. And it's quite the struggle when we lose a loved one due to natural causes. But when a life is taken under questionable circumstances, when we lose a life under questionable circumstances, questions need to be answered. And I understand the discomfort of not having your questions answered. These are questions that need to be answered. These people need to find their peace. And it's not easy. Anyone that has gone through losing a loved one, everybody knows it's not easy. But when the loved one's life is snuffed out, And there are so many unanswered questions. It makes it that much harder. Let's get together and see what we can do to help put this family at ease, to help bring peace to their troubled minds.
I say you're never gonna get me down.
This is where we're gonna part company tonight with the sound of G. Cole.
Peace of mind is a holiday.
Wishing that they get to have peace of mind, to have that mental holiday.
It just flows by.
Good morning, good afternoon, good day to you wherever you are in the world. From right here in South Florida, I bid you a good night. Do remember to look out for members of your community. And remember, your community is not just development that you live in, but it spreads far and wide. So those that pass on the bus, the plane, the boat, or the train, whether you walk, ride, or drive, these are members of your community. Do something good for one of them today, because you never know who's going to do something good for you tomorrow. My name is DJ Kevin Stew, so I like to do it to you, for you, and with you every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, right here, kevinstew.com and affiliates. Thank you to the affiliates. Thank you to my sponsors. Y'all take care. Be good. If you can't be good at it. Until we meet again, deuces. Greetings and salutations, one and all. You're invited to tune in to the Night Shift with DJ Kevin Stew. It airs on Mondays with Community and Finance, Tuesdays with Healthy Love, and Wednesdays with Real Talk from 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Come spend some time interacting in the stew pot, where we keep things bubbling and wind down in musical therapy. The Night Shift with DJ Kevin Stew is on kevinstew.com, where you're encouraged to have acceptance through enlightenment.